Sadrizi Saraibos, Lomeri, Udrizi, Velario, Iglia, Idirasua. And with that, welcome everybody to another episode of the Lunch Table Podcast. In this episode, we're going to review episode 10 of House of the Dragon and the whole season in general. If you guys make it to the end, please remember to like and share if you're so kind to do so. And also check out our other reviews. Weekly, we're doing Handmaid's Tale and or currently. Without further ado, Dylan, this was an awesome successor, I believe, to Game of Thrones. But give me your thoughts.
Yeah, it was very unique, very different from the other Game of Thrones series. It feels like very like Shakespearean. It's almost like you're watching like a play like unfold. And it's very, I would say, more dialogue driven than the other show because Game of Thrones, they threw in like a lot of like battle sequences, but there's only like a few action sequences in the show, but it's very character driven, and a lot of these characters have all like very unique ambitions. They all have agendas, man, and that's the beauty of Game of Thrones. Everybody has something they want in this series. But yeah, shout out to the amazing cast. I mean, Paddy Considine, like his Viserys was like so believable, and he's like probably like one of my favorite characters just because like he's not that like toxic kind of like ruler that we see normally in Game of Thrones. He's like a very like he actually like cares about his people and his family. And shout out to Millie Alcock and Emma Darcy for portraying this character of Rhaenyra and making it feel cohesive. But yeah, what were your thoughts on the series?
Yeah, well, for sure, Game of Thrones is that type of thing where it's medieval but very political, with fantastical elements. And I think this show was very, very political. I think even way more so than Game of Thrones. And I think it's worthy to be a successor of Game of Thrones. I wonder how many seasons they'll get out of it. I know that this in the books, this takes place through many years of this civil war, right? A lot of people are going to die, guys, so get ready for that. I also think that Olivia Cooke as Alicent Hightower, actually, she reminds me of like Cersei, but a more sympathetic Cersei. And I really like that. It's really different, right? And Millie Alcock, a lot of people were saying that I think that's one of the weird things about the show. It makes sense, but not really, because some actors they didn't replace. When they replaced Millie Alcock, I think it became a little jaunting for some people. With each episode, you kind of have to track who's who, and the only way you can really do that is by these little nuances of like people looking at other characters weird or something like that. But I wasn't too bothered by it, so I don't think it was a big flaw on their part. And yeah, we got plenty of dragons in this season too. What do you think about the dragons?
Yeah, a lot of the dragons looked awesome, and that last episode where we actually got to see them in action, like fighting each other, man, that was amazing. The CGI really held up, and it was really cool like to see like the Targaryens at like the height of their power, and like they have like dragons are pretty like normal for them. They're like training with them at like I feel like How to Train Your Dragon kind of,
Right.
but with the Game of Thrones. But yeah, it was cool. And yeah, the aging thing wasn't too bad, although it felt like for me, I don't know, it was weird because like I got so invested in Millie Alcock when we jumped to like Emma Darcy. I was like, oh man, I really like the actress who played her before. So I mean, yeah, it does span over like several years, but I think it does it in a neat way. So it's like you get to see them like mature over time. Although it was weird sometimes because like Viserys, I felt like was the only one like really aging, because like everybody else like Matt Smith, like Damon didn't really look like he was aging, and even like
Sir Cole.
Rhaenyra, I mean Rhaena or Rhaenys, whatever her name is, the the wife of Cloris, like they didn't really age that much. So like the older actors felt like they were the same, but then the younger actors just kept like aging. But it wasn't too bad in my opinion.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry. I said Sir Cole, Sir Kristen. Yeah, I don't think it was too bad. I think it's a little weird, but anyway, I think that Emma Darcy and Olivia Cooke will stay in their roles for a long time, and the children as well. So this is the part where actually in the books start out kind of like when they're already older a little bit. So I think that we're gonna remain with these actors for like multiple seasons to come. But I wanted to get your thoughts on the whole, which I found was really weird, and I found it was really compelling. I wanted to get your whole thoughts on Alicent Hightower's relationship with Princess Rhaenyra. There's such a shift. So let me just get your overall thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning they're really close, and they're pretty much like sisters from episode 1, and then it's big shift, like you said in the last episode. They're so divided, and I love seeing that journey. It really shows like the political like divide, and how the politics of this show really like changes, your perspective, and the people you thought were friends are actually your enemies. And it showed like they have like two different very unique perspectives on ruling. And but the funny thing is they're very similar. Like I think even Allison said like they have so many similar qualities. They're both mothers, and they both have responsibilities, and they just want what's best for their family. And they both come from fathers that are trying to keep the kingdom safe, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, this is Game of Thrones, obviously. So you have to play the game, or else you'll die, and your family will die too. So yeah, it was great seeing that shift. And yeah, and this show talks so much about like what it means to be like a strong, independent woman, especially like in this time, where like men are pretty much like the dominant like rulers. And even like that scene where like Viserys's wife, where she was like pregnant and she was giving birth, and they were showing like the tournament side by side. It kind of shows like she even said it, like the pregnancy and giving birth, that's the woman's battlefield, right? It's not like men. They have different battles that they go through. But yeah, it was great seeing like their transformation, and seeing where Rhaenyra went from episode 1 to the last episode.
Right. And I also think for King Viserys, him being ill seemed kind of like a side effect of sitting on the throne. And I like that. That's kind of like a cool metaphor, right? It's poisoning you slowly through years.
It's like heavy lies the crown, kind of. Yeah.
Exactly. And with that, I wanted to get your thoughts, because this episode now we're seeing, the war is starting to begin in episode 10. And I want to get your thoughts on, there's a lot that happened, and there's a lot of surprising things that happen. But let me just get your overall thoughts about this episode.
Yeah, like I said, Viserys was like one of my favorite characters, just because he was such a diplomat, and not like a toxic king like we've seen with like Joffrey, and like even like Rob Baratheon was kind of like this like piggish dude who like he had like a temper. But yeah, Viserys, he has like a great temperance, and he just wants his family to live in peace, right? And he's very forgiving, and he's very quick to you know, negotiate. And I think, and also he's also has so much stress on his shoulders too, as we see, like you said, like the stress of becoming king kind of like devours his personality over time, and you can see like the physical corruption. At first, I thought he had like grayscale or something. I thought that was what his sickness was, but I think it was kind of like a metaphor, I guess. Like you said, like maybe just like the stress of becoming king just like kind of like got to him, and his mentality kind of shifted. But I like that throughout the series he was kind of consistent with his attitude, and his love for his family, and his love for Rhaenyra, and the fact that he even wanted to make Rhaenyra his heir really says a lot about his character. But I was kind of mad that he kind of like made Aegon the heir at the end. I don't know if like that's what he really intended, or maybe like Allison like misinterpreted what he said. Like, what were your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, what I was trying to get to with this episode was, yeah, it's the culmination of everything, and I think that did happen in the books. And yeah, I think he was just sick, and she kind of misinterpreted that a certain way. And obviously, we see this come to a head in this episode. So yeah, it's a sad situation. It's a toxic situation. I think the rightful queen is Princess Rhaenyra, and I think no one really goes against that. And this episode was very, a heavy dialogue. It felt like the tension was turning to 11, right? So yeah, so so let's talk about this episode. So a lot of stuff happened in this episode. What were your overall thoughts?
Yeah, the final episode, man. Well, even just the final 3 episodes, so much happened, and I felt at times like it did kind of like drag on a bit, and there were moments where like they could have cut out a lot of this like empty like scenes, like people weren't really talking much. But overall, it was you could feel the suspense building. It kind of reminded me of like the first season of Game of Thrones, when they were trying to uh install like Joffrey as the king, and like
Mhm.
there's kind of like this usurpation, and then like there's a big war that leads to it, right? The War of Five Kings, I think. Um but yeah, it was really like cool to see like so many allegiances, and so many like friendships, like there's bridges burning, there's bridges rebuilding, Like I wasn't sure like where the Lord Corliss's like what his allegiances were because like he kind of hates both sides. And even like Allison, like she kind of had a confliction because like she was loyal to Viserys, but at the same time she knows like Rhaenyra is her friend and she didn't want her to die because she's a mother too. Um, so there's so many conflicts building, and I wanted to get your thoughts too on Damon and Matt Smith's portrayal because he's a very like he's all over the place in this series, man. But yeah, he's one of my favorite characters. What do you think of Damon?
Oh yeah, he's energetic in the role, and I'm glad that they kept him. I'm glad that Allison's first husband. So they did like a role reversal, right? When Allison's first husband left, it was supposed to be Damon. So instead, they kept Damon, and I think that was a wise choice because Matt Smith played the hell of that role, and I think that you know. He was in I believe Doctor Who, right? And I think he kind of became famous from
Hmm.
that. And I think that this will further cement his
And he was in The
fame.
Crown too. That's so funny.
Yeah. I think he's awesome in this role. I think he's that type. He's kind of like that Michonne character in The Walking Dead, where you always know, oh, like you get Michonne there, right? She's gonna be safe. Same thing with Damon. Like no matter what, I think he's badass for trying to get that dragon to be on their side because the more he's that type of guy you go to get something done. And also like he has like something he has a wisdom behind him as well, and I think that makes him a formidable opponent for the Greens. And also which is funny because Aemon Targaryen, right? He had his eye cut by Rhaenyra's son in one of the episodes, and he reminds me a lot of Daemon. In this episode, we have like a crazy battle that reminded me kind of like Godzilla when it's taking place at night. So Rhaenyra sends her kids to send a message, and I felt so bad for him. I think that kind of happened in the books, but let me get your thoughts on that whole scene because that was one of the best fight scenes, at least for me, in Game of Thrones thus far. I love that because it
That scene
wasn't
was
actually a
crazy.
fight
I
of
was
people.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was like some Pacific Rim shit. It was cool to see the Stormlands too. We never saw it in Game of Thrones. But yeah, that whole battle sequence where they're like flying in the sky and they're kind of like evading each other was really cool. I even like Aemon like his origin story, like how he tamed Vagar. It reminded me so much of Buckbeak from Harry Potter when he's flying over the lake. But yeah, he's a great villain. He's a great like tragic character, and it's sad to see like the kids were so I guess indoctrinated into this kind of like toxic environment that they showed like the kids were like fighting each other and they were like calling each other bastards and shit. So even like the kids aren't like exempt from violence in the show. Um, but yeah, I love that scene. Yeah, it was awesome. It's tragic though because we see, of course, Luke gets eaten. I was like, "Oh shit!" Like if I had
Look
seen this in the theaters, I
out!
probably would have jumped in my seat. But yeah, it was awesome, and it's a great cliffhanger for a potential season 2.
Yeah, I think things are going to boil over the pot. Really, we get a close up of Rhaenyra. It kind of reminds me of that type of cinematography from The Handmaid's Tale. I think just the facial expressions alone says a lot about what's going to happen, and I think Rhaenyra now is kind of going to be like it's something about the Targaryens. Once you get them mad, like a whole like conquest just
Right.
happens again and again and again.
Activate something.
All
Yeah.
right, and
Well, I was
we kind
gonna
of see
ask
that.
you. Yeah, I was gonna ask you. Like, do you think Rhaenyra's kind of like? Because some people were saying like she felt like a carbon copy of Daenerys. Do you feel like she kind of like has her own, I guess, differentiate like personality?
For sure. I think, well, she grew up very formal in a political household. So I think actually where uh, I think Emilia Clarke's portrayal of Daenerys, sorry, I was blanking there. I think she's more of like this. She reminds me a lot more of Aegon the Conqueror. I believe she's more like vicious, whereas Princess Rhaenyra, she reminds me a lot of her father. Um,
Mm.
but I think they're products of the people that's around them. So Damon, he's kind of like a hothead at sometimes, and Alison Hightower, she seems to be, she seems to have good intentions, sort of. But Otto Hightower is kind of like that snake kind of character. So for Rhaenyra, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe she's gonna do a lot of bad stuff. I know that a lot of people will die in the books, and a lot of people are gonna be disrespected and mutilated and stuff like that. So it might be all because of Rhaenyra. I don't know how they're gonna twist it here. Um, with that being said, I wanted to get your overall thoughts on this season, adding finality to it. As this episode, actually, I thought was pretty cool because when the show started, Otto Hightower was on the bridge, right? And then all of a sudden, this episode, this last episode,
Kind of call back.
yeah. Right? So it's kind of like a symmetrical thing. So, yeah. So give me your final thoughts on it.
Yeah, overall, I would say great series. I love what they did with this spin-off. And it's so funny because I was watching Rings of Power at the same time I was watching this show, so it's similar to see like these different like time periods like being showcased on screen, and we see like different characters that kind of feel like characters we already know, but they have their own, I guess, journeys, I guess. So yeah, overall, I would give this show 9 out of 10. How would you rate it?
Oh, for sure. I think I would give it a 10 out of 10. Every episode, I just kept on wanting to come back. I really enjoyed this series so far, and I can't wait for season 2. Who knows? I think they renewed it for 4 seasons, so I cannot wait for the future to come. But yeah, everybody, that's our review of House of the Dragon. Sorry, this review is pretty long. We have plenty of thoughts to say about it. If you guys are new to the channel, we do reviews every week. We're reviewing right now, again, as I said, Andor, Handmaid's Tale. We have plenty of reviews coming out in the future, plenty of movie reviews, and a lot of content to come for November and December. Also, soon, we're going to end our spooky season reviews, so I cannot wait for that. I'll keep you guys posted. But Dylan, without further ado,
Yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in for our review of House of the Dragon. If you're not following the channel already, please do. We appreciate your patronage. You can follow us, of course, on YouTube, but you can also follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Anchor. You can follow us on Instagram as well. We post clips of our socials for our episodes, so you can check those out as well. So thank you again, and until then, thanks for having lunch with us.
Dracarys!